Hey everybody, this is Clint at Manskull 101, and today we're in the classroom, or the Freedom Room. See big old glory flying behind us, how cool is that? I want to talk to you today about why your 40 Smith & Wesson sucks. Well, we're going to call this the No Bull Ballistics series, and I want to talk about 40 Smith & Wesson. Also 10 millimeter auto. I have some guys I talk to occasionally, and it pops up about 10 millimeter. So we have conversation about that. And then, more than a few times, the other guy will say, well, I got a 40 and act like it's the same thing. Well, it's definitely not. So it is the same diameter bullet. It's a .40 bullet, and they can shoot the very same bullets in the very same bullet weights. However, there is some difference. Starting out with just the size of the case. That's a 10 on this side, obviously, and that's a 40 on the other side. So it's a little more than it's 0.144 inches longer. So a little more than 1/8 of an inch longer, which of course gives it more case capacity on the 10 millimeter side. Let me see, as far as H2O volume, the 40 can hold 19.3 grains of H2O. Some people call that water. And the 10 millimeter can hold 24.1 grains of H2O. Also, max pressure ratings for the 40 Smith & Wesson are 35,000 PSI. And for the 10 millimeter auto, it's 37,500. And then I went through this stack, actually, plus a few more that didn't even have 10 millimeter loads in it. I went through this stack of loading manuals and compiled some data. And what I was looking for was what I consider usable bullet weights, which in my opinion range from a 155 to a 200 in both of these cartridges. And I compiled the data. And so let's go through that. I want to show you what I found. And so let's start off with the Smith & Wesson. In the Hornady number 11 manual, and we'll talk about foot-pounds of energy, but we're also going to talk about bullet weight and bullet construction also. So in a 155 hollow point, which would be an XTP, out of the Hornady manual, we got 581 foot-pounds of energy. Now that's 1,300 feet a second with a 155 out of this 40 Smith & Wesson. That is the hottest load for the 40 Smith & Wesson in the Hornady number 11 manual. And then in that same manual, 10 millimeter 155, it shows 1,450 feet per second, and that gives you 724 foot-pounds of energy. So that's 11.5% increase in foot-pounds of energy. So more than 10%, 11.5%. That's fairly significant. If we move down, it's still staying in that same manual. If we move down to a 180 grain bullet at 1,100 feet a second, this is max load in that book. We get 483 foot-pounds of energy. And the 10 millimeter with that same 180 bullet, you get 1,250 feet per second at 624 foot-pounds of energy, which equals 31% increase in foot-pounds of energy. So that's significant, again, really significant. And now we're in the do everything bullet range, I think. I think if you want to shoot with one bullet most of the time, if not all the time, practice with it, hunt with it, carry it for bear defense, carry it for home defense, personal defense, that 180 is going to do all those jobs. In a hollow point, I've done quite a bit of testing. Hopefully you saw some of those videos. Done quite a bit of testing. That's kind of my one pick, my number one pick. Also, I create a 180 hard cast hollow point, which I'm super happy with, and still playing with the depth of the hollow point a little bit, but with just a shallow hollow point, according to the testing I do, which is through a pork shoulder blade into a 5-gallon jug of water or two, it's impressive with great penetration and explosiveness like hydrostatic shock and foot-pounds of energy. That's kind of my pick, that 180. When I step up to a 200, you get great penetration. Even a little better penetration with the hollow point still. But with a solid, great penetration, but you lose some of that hydrostatic shock effect. I think you want both of those things. I think you want great penetration and hydrostatic shock. I'm not saying a 200 is a bad choice, but I'm saying for me in a 10 millimeter, I think the 180 is the pick. So back to my chart here. So then we go down to a 200 grain in a 40 Smith & Wesson. You get 900 feet per second. That's 359 foot-pounds of energy. Over on the 10 millimeter side, same bullet, same reloading manual, hottest load, comparing apples to apples here, the very best I can. You get 1150 feet per second and 587 foot-pounds of energy. That's a 27% increase. Again, significant, right? Significant. So let's move down to the next manual I found good data in was the Lyman 50th year, I guess 50th anniversary edition loading manual. And so with a 155 grain bullet, they're showing 1,082 feet per second with 403 foot-pounds of energy. And then in that manual, though, they list it as copper units of pressure. So there's a conversion. I'll tell you what it is. I'm not 100% confident in it yet. But copper units of pressure equals 1.5 times 1.516, and then to divide it by subtract 17,902. And that should equate to your PSI. So now a lot of the loading manuals are using PSI where, for maybe until 10 years ago, they all used copper units of pressure. So that's a little weird for me to do that transition. I'll let you worry about that. And then in the same manual, the Lyman manual 155 out of the 10 millimeter, you get 1,343 feet per second at 620 foot-pounds of energy. That's a 24% increase over the 40 Smith & Wesson in the same manual. Same bullet, same manual, max loads on both of those, right? Move down to the 180. For the 40, we got 1,013 feet per second. Moving along pretty good. That's not bad. 180 grain, 1,000 feet per second. And 410 foot-pounds of energy. When we move over to the 10 millimeter with the 180 grain bullet, same Lyman manual, we get 1,225 feet per second and 599 foot-pounds of energy. That is a 20% increase. Significant, significant. In the Lyman manual for a 200 for a 40 Smith & Wesson, they don't list a load. For the 200 grain for the 10 millimeter, they listed at 1,145 feet per second, which is 585 foot-pounds of energy. And we move down out of that manual now down to the Spear manual. 155 for the 40 gives you 1,221 and 513 foot-pounds of energy. We're over at the 10 millimeter, 155 gives you 1,320 and a 599 foot-pounds of energy at 8.1% increase. That's kind of a small increase, right? I feel like they didn't really push that to the max on that 10 millimeter load. All right, so we've got to the bottom of our page of 3 different loading manuals between the 40 Smith & Wesson 10 millimeter auto. And I think without doing the specific math, I'm going to read down the percentage advantages on the 10 millimeter, just so we get an idea of all these loads. 11.5%, 31%, 27%, 24%, 20%, 8.1%, and 26%. I would say you could call that 20% easily advantage for the 10 millimeter. Well, what's the disadvantages? Well, when this all started out, they had the Miami shootout in 82, I believe it was, maybe 83. And the FBI decided they needed a more powerful gun. They were shooting 38 specials, 9 millimeters. And they got into the shootout. I'll let you look that up. Pretty crazy. Anyway, they decided they needed more power. So Jeff Cooper, and had some help, but created the 10 millimeter auto. FBI quickly adopted it. But then in a short period of time, some of the FBI agents decided this is too much gun, too big a gun, too much recoil, too much gun overall. So the original loading was a 200 grain bullet at 1,200 feet per second. Which, let me see if I can cross-reference that real quick, is about 600 foot-pounds of energy. And of course, you know, bullet selection is everything, or almost everything. Anyway, so they then started downloading it to what was called the FBI load or a subsonic load. And then shortly thereafter, Smith & Wesson and somebody else got together and created the 40 Smith & Wesson. They're like, hey, if we're downloading this thing, we don't need that big, you know, 1006 or the Delta Elite, Colt Delta Elite, Smith & Wesson 1006 models, big, heavy 10 millimeters. We don't need that if we're going to download this to what's now the 40 Smith & Wesson. So that was a benefit. Smaller handgun, less recoil, typically same capacity, because now remember, these are both 10 millimeter bullets or .400 diameter bullets, right? It shoots the same bullet, just more powder capacity in the 10 compared to the 40. As you can see, pretty more case capacity, right? And then they also run at a higher pressure, 37,500 for the 10 millimeter, 35,000 for the 40. So they downsized, except for the hostage rescue team and the SWAT team. They both still maintain 10 millimeter auto guns. Well, now I have two 10 millimeters. I have a Smith & Wesson 1006 and also a Glock Model 20. And they're both great guns, and I love both of them. Now that Glock 20, you may have seen it in some of my videos. I've got it dolled up with a Vortex red dot and a Streamlight light. And it's awesome. I love that thing. I think it's a do-everything gun. I think if I go into the woods, I'm covered with that gun. You know, at the minimum 10-round mag and another one in, you know, close proximity gives you a lot of firepower. So if I didn't already have a 10 millimeter, would I buy a 40? If 10 millimeter wasn't a thing, I'd probably get a 40. I like them. But seeing as how 10 millimeter is a thing, I already owned a 10, and now I've got two 10 millimeters. So no reason to go to a 40. You can always download your 10 millimeter to 40 ballistics very easily. Not a problem. Not a problem. Same bullet, same powder. Just download it a little bit, right? It's attainable. 40 Smith & Wesson ballistics out of your 10 very easily. It'll shoot like a, you know, like a dream. Not that my 10s shoot bad at all. Anyways, but you cannot achieve the ballistic equivalency of a 10 millimeter with your 40. So there's the thing. Also, you can, don't do it because I said you can do it. I'm pretty sure you can shoot 40 Smith & Wesson out of your 10 millimeter. Now, it may not run the action, but in event of the apocalypse and you can't find 10 millimeter ammo anywhere, but you can scrape up some 40. It may be a single shot, but it's probably going to work in an emergency. Same thing with a 9 millimeter and a 380. Don't do it because I said you can do it, but it'll probably work in an emergency. So bear that in mind. Now then I went on a little further and I thought, okay, well, it's pretty conclusive to me that the 10 millimeters got more power than the 40. And there's nothing wrong with the 40. I was just joking about saying your 40 sucks. It doesn't, but it is not a 10 millimeter. So then I went on the interweb and looked up 10 millimeter loads and compiled some data on what's available. So I'm going to read down the list of 10 millimeter loads, and then I'll read down a list of 40 Smith & Wesson loads just to give you some more what's available for purchase at your local gun store. So we'll go 40 Smith & Wesson first. So the Remington Gold Saber 165 at 1150, 484 foot-pounds of energy. That's a 165, 484, pretty good load. The also Remington Gold Saber 180 is at 1,015 feet per second with 412 foot-pounds of energy. And then they also have a 155 at 1205 feet per second at 500 foot-pounds of energy. I believe that is the highest foot-pounds of energy that I've discovered for the 40 Smith & Wesson. Not too shabby. Spear Gold Dot, a 165 at 1150 is 484 foot-pounds of energy. Their 180 at 1,025 feet per second is 420 foot-pounds of energy. And then that's a full, jacket to hollow point. And then a 180 TMJ, total metal jacket, 1,000 feet per second, 400 foot-pounds of energy. So the biggie there is a 155 at 500 foot-pounds of energy. Not too shabby, not too shabby. Now we're going to flip over to the 10 millimeter, which oddly enough, I was able to find more load data. That's completely flipped from 10 years ago when I got my 10 millimeter, that Smith & Wesson 1006. Truth be told, I was, components, i.e. powder, and other various items to make your hand loads were hard to come by 10 years ago. And so I wound up with some red dot, bought a keg of it. And I'm like, I can use that. I can use that for a whole bunch of stuff. And I could not find any data for red dot for 10 millimeter. But, using what I know of, decades of hand loading, I came up with a load and then increased it a little bit and then back off a little bit. Anyway, where I had ammo for that 10 millimeter. I had ammo for 10 millimeter, 12 gauge, 44 mag, 38 special, all kinds of stuff with that red dot. Not recommending it, but when you can't get anything else, 8 pounds of red dot will go a long ways. I loaded my 9 millimeter with red dot, a whole bunch of that stuff. Scary part is you could throw a double or even a triple load in a 9 millimeter case with red dot and blow your gun up and yourself. Anyway, but in a pinch, it got us through that spell. So I'm going to go down the 10 millimeter road here with load data that I was able to compile from purchasable loaded ammo. So Atomic brand, I've never heard of that before, but I found this data, so I thought I'd share it with you. A 180 at 1250, and that's 624 foot-pounds of energy. Not bad. Buffalo Bore, a 180 at 1200, 575 foot-pounds of energy, and that's a full metal jacket. Buffalo Bore 200 at 1200 feet per second, full metal jacket, is 639. I think let's stop right there for a second. You want to talk about this full metal jacket, hollow point, soft point stuff? I've done a lot of testing with that 10 millimeter now, and absolutely, no doubt, you will get deeper penetration from a hard cast bullet. Obvious. Everybody knew that anyway, but I proved it to myself. And then I shot hollow points with the same weight into that same medium, which was a pork shoulder blade, a 5-gallon jug of water, maybe 2, block of ice behind it, and realized that there's a whole bunch more hydrostatic shock involved in a hollow point. And still, depending on bullet weight, the 155, I don't think is a do everything bullet. I think for self-defense, that's nasty. A 155 at 1,500 feet per second is wicked. It's going to take care of everything up to a big pig or a mean bear, or a mean pig and a big bear, vice versa. I think it's a little light for a do-everything bullet, but it's going to take care of most things. You can put a deer down with that. You can put a hog down with that. Man, I don't think I would sick it on a grizzly bear, though, because hydrostatic shock's amazing. You might blow the whole muscle mass off the shoulder of that bear, but it may not penetrate to the vitals. And if the bear is mad, as they typically are, it's going to eat you anyway. Possibly. That's my thought process. Anyway, so moving on. So bullet construction is a big deal, right? We all know that. I'm always looking for a happy balance between hydrostatic shock and penetration. I want 20 inches of penetration and some nasty hydrostatic shock. So, what I looked at, 180s are kind of a sweet spot in a 10 millimeter. And, so bullet design then, we're talking hollow points, hard cast. I like a little bit of a hollow point, or at least a soft point. Now, I didn't have any of those type of bullets to test. Also, I didn't have any monolithic bullets of a solid copper bullet to test out of a 10 millimeter. So anyways, so moving along then, we got the Buffalo bore at 1200 feet per second, a full metal jacket bullet at 575, the 200 grain 1200 feet per second at 639 foot-pounds of energy. And those are both full metal jacket bullets and both have good foot-pounds of energy. They're both going to have good penetration. Wouldn't be a bad load. I hear good things about Buffalo bore, right? So do you, I'm sure. Pretty well known. Then we move on to double tap. They've got a 180 jacketed hollow point at 1314 feet per second. That's 690 foot-pounds of energy. Not bad at all. They have a 200 grain jacketed hollow point at 1258 feet per second. That's warm, right? That's warm. At 703 foot-pounds of energy. And then they have so that's a controlled expansion bullet. That might be a good way to go, where you're getting that hydrostatic shock, but it's controlled. They also have a 200 grain full metal jacket flat point, which now you're getting that nice flat frontal area, which is desirable, at 1275. What, a 200 grain at 1275? Now, they don't give you the barrel length on this data, but you would think we're talking about, a semi-auto pistol, so 5 inches, 6 at the very most is what we're talking about. That 200 grain at 1275 is 722 foot-pounds of energy. That's pretty wicked. So that's a lot of energy and a 200 grain full metal jacket flat point. That's wicked right there. That's wicked. Now, is it going to depart a bunch of hydrostatic shock on your target? You'd be best off if you shoot it through some big bones, because it's going to penetrate those big bones and break the bone and then create more disruption and still penetrate into the vitals. That's what I think. Let me see. So wicked. Hard cast solid at 1308, 759. And then the Hornady Custom XTP hollow point, 180 at 1275 feet per second, 650 foot-pounds of energy. So again, back to, the 10 millimeter and 40 Smith & Wesson. If you got a 40 and you shoot it well and you like it, rock on, brother. If you're thinking about buying a do-everything pistol, don't overlook that 10 millimeter. Don't be scared of it. The recoil's nice. There's nothing to worry about. The most recoiling load I've got is that 155 at about 1,500 feet per second. It's got some pop to it. You feel that thing, and it's wicked on a target. So, but it seems like the heavier bullets tame the recoil some. That's what it seems like to me. Anyways, both great cartridges, a myriad of guns available for them. And so just put some thought process into it. I believe now that you can get a 10 millimeter Glock 20 that's going to be the same size and weight as a Smith & Wesson 40 Smith & Wesson in a Glock or in an MMP or whatever you like. And they both have high capacity mags and all that type of thing. So anyways, it's a great discussion. Like I say, my point is, I'm not poo-pooing a 40 Smith & Wesson. I think it's a great cartridge and great guns. Don't own one, but it's not a 10 millimeter. So, just keep that in mind. Anyways, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope this is okay for you. I'm going to do some more of these, no bull ballistics. And I hope you appreciate it. Like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff. Share it with your buddies. Tell them this guy's full of crap. Watch this video. I don't care. Tell me what you think. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. This is Clint at Man Skull 101. Have a great day.